Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about my week number 17 must-start and must-sit players for fantasy football in 2021. Inside today's video, we'll begin by discussing my must-start players of the week, and then about halfway into the video, we're going to be pivoting into my must-sit players based upon their matchups for week number 17. But before we could get on into things, I would like to ask if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, to please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure to hit that like button down below. It would help us out a ton. And if you would like to follow me on Twitter, please do so at Notorious FNTSY. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 17 must start and must sit players. We begin with the must start category, headlined by Darrel Williams, running back of the Kansas City Chiefs, going up against the Cincinnati Bengals this week in Cincinnati. With Clyde Edwards-Helaire now being considered week to week with a bruised shoulder, Darrel Williams will be elevated into the starting running back role inside of this Chiefs offense. The Chiefs also have Derek Gore, who will be getting some work in this game up against the Cincinnati Bengals, as he has kind of earned that right throughout the last couple of games of the season. We have seen some flashes of Derek Gore, so Derek Gore will certainly have a role in this offense, but Darrel Williams is going to be the clear lead running back on this team. Last week, Darrel Williams had 11 rushes for 55 yards, as well as having 3 receptions for 30 yards. The last game in which Clyde Edwards-Helaire missed the game and Darrel Williams was the starter was all the way back in week number 10 up against the Las Vegas Raiders. In that game, Williams had 11 carries for 43 yards, as well as having 9 receptions for 101 yards and a touchdown. Assume that Darrel Williams is going to be seeing a hefty workload this week up against the Cincinnati Bengals. I expect this to be a very high-scoring game, and I expect Darrel Williams to see a bunch of opportunities to catch the ball in this game. So I love Darrel Williams here up against the Cincinnati Bengals this week in Cincinnati. Next up, we move to my must-start wide receiver of today's video, and that is Amon-Ra St.Brown of the Detroit Lions, going up against the Seattle Seahawks this week in Seattle. Even with Jared Goff not playing and Tim Boyle stepping in as the starter last week, St. Brown had 9 receptions on 11 targets for 91 yards and a touchdown. A lot of people were very nervous about Tim Boyle being the starting quarterback because while no one goes ahead and says that, oh, Jared Goff is the best quarterback in the NFL, of course not, that would be fucking silly. But Jared Goff is still an above being completely terrible quarterback, so he's just about all right. And then going from Goff to Tim Boyle, people were pretty nervous because Jared Goff was just force-feeding the ball down the throat of Amon-Ra St. Brown. And last week, even with Tim Boyle under center, Amon-Ra St. Brown paid off heavily. This week, Goff will return, which adds to St. Brown's appeal. He has had 46 targets in the last 4 games and is the clear lead number 1 receiver on this team. And with the amount of volume he could receive up against a not-so-hot Seattle Seahawks defense, Amon-Ra St. Brown could finish easily as a top 12, maybe even a top 5 wide receiver on the week. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys that Amon-Ra St. Brown is a must-start wide receiver. Even if the Lions are far from an amazing team, Amon-Ra St. Brown continues to get it done week in and week out. I know some people may be a little bit nervous because there is potential that DeAndre Swift returns, and when Amon-Ra St. Brown has been putting up these humongous numbers game in and game out, DeAndre Swift wasn't there. I think even if DeAndre Swift does return this week to play up against the Seattle Seahawks, that Amon-Ra St. Brown will be just fine. Maybe he goes from getting 11 or 12 targets in a game to getting maybe 9 targets, but he's still going to be just fine in my opinion. So I still love Amon-Ra St. Brown this week, even if DeAndre Swift was to return. Next up, we move to Trey Lance, quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers, going up against the Houston Texans this week. And I know some people might be a little bit nervous. They felt like, oh, I felt trapped into playing Justin Herbert last week up against the Houston Texans. I thought this was going to be this easy matchup. I believe the exact same thing, and we all know that Justin Herbert struggled last week, but I do think Trey Lance, even though this is his second ever start in the NFL, will be able to pay off here up against the Texans. It may seem a little bit weird to start a rookie quarterback that only started 1 game thus far in his NFL career in your potential championship matchup for fantasy football, but in my opinion, Trey Lance is a clear exception to that kind of thought process in your mind where you don't want to play him because he has only played in 1 game ever in his NFL career. In his last start was all the way back in week number 5. He had 15 completions on 29 attempts for 192 yards and an interception. He also had 16 rushes for 89 yards in that game. The rushing upside of a quarterback is so vital in fantasy football. Unless you're a guy like Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady that can just throw so many touchdowns in a game that it can negate the fact that you're a statue back there, Trey Lance has so much rushing upside. He could easily rush for over 100 yards in this game, get multiple rushing touchdowns, and that really does add up in terms of fantasy football. The reason why Taysom Hill is so kind of sought after in fantasy football is not because he's the greatest passer in the NFL. Taysom Hill fucking sucks at being a quarterback, but he's so good at running the ball. Even if he throws 3 interceptions in a game, he can just negate that by rushing the ball so much. That's kind of a similar situation I see here with Trey Lance. The matchup is great up against the Houston Texans, so I'm going to fire Trey Lance up, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if he finishes as a top 5 quarterback at the end of the week. My next must-start player is Gerald Everett, tight end of the Seattle Seahawks, going up against the Detroit Lions this week. Everett has stepped into a very strong role in this offense over the last couple of weeks. Last week, he had 4 receptions on 5 targets for 68 yards as well as a touchdown. This week, he goes up against the Detroit Lions, who are downright fucking atrocious at stopping the tight end position. They allow 7.8 targets, 5.6 receptions, 65.27 yards, and 0.33 touchdowns to the tight end position on a per-game basis. With the increased workload on the Seahawks for Everett, as well as matching that with the excellent matchup up against the Lions, Everett should be started in all of your lineups this week. I love Gerald Everett here in a very solid matchup up against the Detroit Lions. But before we pivot into the must-sit players of the week, I would like to let you guys know that we have partnered with Yahoo Fantasy this NFL season to bring you guys some great offers. Check out our exclusive limited time offer, which gets you guys 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum to qualify. You need to be new to Yahoo, sign up for an account via the link down below, deposit and play. That's it. Yahoo will send us your name after you play in your first paid contest, and we'll reach out to you via email with your coupon. If you would like immediate access, that's okay as well. All you got to do is email support@awesemo.com and we will get you set up. You can also claim a free $10 of site credit by clicking the link down below in the video description, which can be used to enter any Yahoo contest, including the $1 million NFL Baller. Make sure to use our DFS tools and projections designed specifically for Yahoo to give you guys the best shot at winning big. Back on into the video. Please make sure, though, that you guys do check out Yahoo Fantasy. My first must-sit player of today's video is Saquon Barkley, running back of the New York Football Giants, going up against the Chicago Bears this week in Chicago. Saquon Barkley has been basically slapping you in the face as a fantasy manager all season long. Last week, he had 15 carries for 32 yards and 1 reception for a grand total of -4 yards. He is currently averaging just 3.5 yards per carry, and there are no signs at all pointing towards anything getting better this week. Some will try to talk themselves into Barkley due to his name value, right? It's hard to sit a guy named Saquon Barkley, who we have relied heavily on in the past and has been a top-end running back for fantasy football. And you could also talk yourself into this because, oh, Nick, last week, Rashad Penny played so well up against the Chicago Bears. But Barkley has been a complete and utter fucking unmitigated disaster, so there is no way I am playing Saquon Barkley this week. This also goes hand in hand with just the fact that the Giants offense has been absolutely atrocious over the last couple of weeks. It doesn't matter if it's Mike Glennon, doesn't matter if it's Jake Fromm. This offense is putrid. This team just has a stink around them. There is no way I am playing Saquon Barkley this week up against the Chicago Bears. Next up, we move to my next must-sit, who is Mike Gesicki, tight end of the Miami Dolphins, going up against the Tennessee Titans this week in Tennessee. Gesicki has had some solid games on the season, but he has been far from a consistent player. Over the last 8 games, he has failed to eclipse 10 half PPR points in each of those 8 games, which can be attributed to 2 changes. One is he has scored absolutely 0 touchdowns. The second change is that Durham Smythe, the second-string tight end on the Miami Dolphins, has started to see more snaps. Last week, he had 4 receptions on 3 targets for 22 yards up against the New Orleans Saints, facing the Titans this week, who have been a very tough matchup for the tight end position week in and week out. Is just another reason why you want to leave Gesicki on your bench this week up against the Tennessee Titans. My next must-sit is actually in the exact same game. It's Ryan Tannehill, quarterback of the Tennessee Titans, going up against the Miami Dolphins this week. With the return of A.J. Brown last week, Tannehill played much better. He had 22 completions on 29 attempts for 209 yards, as well as a score in that game. This week is a possible revenge game for Ryan Tannehill, as he used to be the starting quarterback of the Miami Dolphins. But while I love a nice revenge game narrative, this matchup is very concerning up against the Miami Dolphins, who rank 6th in pass DVOA. With the much concerning matchup and the lack of production from Ryan Tannehill all year long, even with A.J. Brown back this week, I really do believe that Ryan Tannehill is best left on your bench. Does that mean that you should sit A.J. Brown? No, but I am very concerned about Ryan Tannehill's production overall with these other wide receivers, not named A.J. Brown, just not really doing anything. My final must-sit of today's video is Mr. Scary, Terry McLaurin, wide receiver of the Washington football team, going up against the Philadelphia Eagles this week. McLaurin was a reliable wide receiver with high upside through week number 11, but ever since then, everything has kind of crumbled down. Everything has went downhill as he has failed to eclipse over 8 half PPR points since week number 11. We're in week number 17 now. Last week, he had 3 receptions on 6 targets for 40 yards, with all of his points coming late in the game after the Dallas Cowboys basically, they didn't give up, right, because they were winning by so much, but they just pulled all their starters. They said, fuck it, you know what, the Washington football team can't do anything against our starters. We don't want to get them hurt, so let's go ahead and take them out of the game. And then Terry got some work. This week, he goes up against the Philadelphia Eagles, who they played 2 weeks ago in a game, and in that game, Terry McLaurin had 2 receptions on 4 targets for 51 yards, while the downswing in production for McLaurin can't really be blamed, and kind of just throw a lot of blame onto Terry McLaurin himself. It could really be blamed on the quarterback position, right? Taylor Heineke, Kyle Allen, fucking Garrett Gilbert was the starting quarterback at a point in this season. But even with that said, there are just no signs of this going upward. It's very similar to Saquon Barkley. Like, the offense is just bad. It's just so bad in Washington. The quarterback situation is terrible. I understand that Terry McLaurin is a good player. The Eagles' defense is really good too. So I just don't want anything to do with Terry McLaurin this week. Going to be very interesting to see where Terry McLaurin ends up getting drafted next season in your 2022 fantasy football drafts. Because if I'm being honest with you, every year we talk ourselves into the player, but the situation just never ends up getting better for the Washington football team. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you did end up enjoying, please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button, as well as hitting that like button down below. Make sure you guys check out Yahoo Fantasy. Link down below in the video description. I love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great rest of your guys' day, and as always, goodbye.